For, what is it, a community service fair badge?
Communications.
Okay. He's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, bud.
Okay, first thing is to approve the agenda. The only change is Mike noted, said that in the consent agenda, items 3 and 4 under C should really be letter D and E because they really do not relate to the chamber at all. So that's really the only change on that. Besides that, nothing material in the paperwork or anything has changed. So. Any other questions or additions, changes to the agenda?
Now with that being removed.
Okay, I got a motion by Sean Ryan,
There's a second.
second by Rick Seiler. If there's no other comments or questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the agenda has passed 4-0. Jim, I assume you're going to start us off.
I will. Tonight, I'd like the council and honorable mayor to entertain giving an oath of office to, or an oath of administration to the new, or latest police officer that was hired. He just successfully completed his field training and is now on the road on his own, and I thought it would be appropriate to get him in for his oath. Andrew Hallberg was raised in Shakopee, Minnesota. He attended Shakopee schools and graduated from Shakopee High School. He received his bachelor's degree in law enforcement from Metropolitan State University. Andrew's law enforcement experience includes him serving in Waterville Police Department as a part-time officer in March of 2016 when he started. A year later, he was made the school resource officer. That was a semi-full-time position. And then he became a full-time officer on the road March of 18. And he was appointed here in New Prague February 6th of 2019. So if you would allow, Mayor, would you administer the oath to him? Oh, yeah, you can.
You want to introduce your family? This is my wife, April, and my daughter, Adeline, and my son is at home.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
Someone shy.
Yeah.
Go front and center there. Andrew, if you raise your right hand. I, Andrew Hallberg,
I, Andrew Hallberg,
on my honor,
on my honor,
will never betray my badge,
will never betray my badge,
my integrity,
my integrity,
my character, or the public trust.
my character, or the public trust.
I will always have the courage
I will always have the courage
to hold myself and others accountable for my actions.
to hold myself and others accountable for their actions.
I will uphold the United States Constitution,
I will uphold the United States Constitution,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and its laws.
and its laws.
I will uphold the ordinances of the City of New Prague
I will uphold the ordinances of the City of New Prague,
and faithfully serve my agency
and faithfully serve my agency
and community to the best of my abilities.
and community to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations. Now, Andrew is the second officer that we've taken from Waterville, and we have taken a lot of heat for this. But third? Oh, I'm not even allowed to go to Waterville anymore.
Patrick, you want one with the family?
Oh, sure.
If you want to be in it.
Sure. Appreciate it.
Want to just step up here?
Don't be shy, you're okay here. We're all dads and grandpas, so don't worry.
Thank you.
you're on a roll, just keep going.
All the way to the
Tonight, we have an officer that got sworn in, and I'm also asking the council tonight to appoint another officer that will be replacing somebody that's anticipated to retire here at the end of June. That officer took part in a application process that started on March 15th. She is currently working for the city of Faribault. She graduated from Faribault High School. She received an Associate's of Science degree in law enforcement from Normandale Community College, and her law enforcement certificate from the Minneapolis Community and Technical College. Her name is Catherine Spicer, and she has been employed with Faribault Police Department for the last 11 and a half years. Prior to that, she worked in Morristown for just over a year and a half, or about a year and a half. While in Faribault since September of 2007, she has served in patrol as a school resource officer in investigation and was an agent on the Cannon River Valley Drug and Violent Offender Task Force for 4 years. So she comes here with a lot of experience and is really looking forward to working here in New Prague. I would recommend that Spicer be appointed as a police officer with an effective starting date of June 18th, 2019, and she would be on step 7 of the Schedule A of our law enforcement union contract, and also on step 6 for vacation. Again, because of the officer's experience, she was put just a slightly lower than a lateral movement, which is starting to be kind of the trend in law enforcement because it is so hard to get people. We had 26 applicants for this position. We just closed our application for our police secretary, a typist clerk, and there were 52 for that. So the numbers for law enforcement officers, even out of school, are way down right now. But we keep looking for the best people that will serve our community with integrity, and I think Catherine will do that for us. She goes by Katie.
Recommend to appoint.
Any questions for Jim?
Other than the fact, would she be residing here, or moving to New Prague, or possibly commuting?
She lives in Lonsdale.
Oh, okay.
They had moved out of Faribault a year ago, about, and their kids go to school in our district. So yeah,
That makes
she's looking
sense.
forward to the move.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Her husband works for Rice County Sheriff's Office, and he works, he's a sergeant that is in charge of the courthouse, bailiff, security.
Nice job.
So, yeah,
Okay.
they're good.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I know Rick has entertained a motion to approve the appointment.
I'll second.
I got a second by Maggie Bass. If there's no other comments or questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
You're gonna have to put up with me for the rest of the evening. Ken is on vacation. Glenn, we gave him the night off, and Bruce didn't have any items, and so you're gonna hear me try to go through the variances from the planning commission. Councilmember Ryan, if I forget anything or don't quite touch on anything, I know you were at the meeting, so maybe you can supplement if you find that you can touch on something that hasn't. But the first variance we have tonight is a request for a variance from a parking lot curbing requirement located at 501 6th Street Northwest, as proposed by Mr. Howard Braith, who's here in the audience with his wife Doreen, right? Okay. What they're looking for is they recently purchased a lot from the industrial park. They've designed everything. However, during the site design and working with the city engineer, it was determined that the parking lot did not need to be curbed for stormwater management purposes, but the type of drainage proposal that they are looking at that was approved by the city engineer in consultation with his engineer would not allow our city engineer to waive the requirement because the alternative that they were looking at was not considered sheet drainage. When you take a look at this, and what I mean by that is that this is north up. If you can see with my red pointer, the building they have here, all of his parking lot around the southern part of his site and the western side of his site, that the drainage, they've tipped the parking lot to basically drain down the middle of the parking lot all the way over to the eastern edge, and then there's riprap, and then it will drain through some swales and ultimately drain over and go into the pond over there is kind of what's occurring in this process. If you can see, basically what I was showing you is it's going to drain this direction over to here in the drainage swales and then go into that pond. But simply because the requirement was under the zoning ordinance, the requirement is that there's supposed to be in place 6-inch concrete curb and gutter, that they didn't want that, and that it's not going to sheet flow from his building here all the way across to the southern site, because they've got another alternative arrangement that either he had to do curb and gutter or it had to sheet flow, and it's not doing that. So that's the reason for the request for the waiver of having to install the curb and gutter. There's been an alternative solution that doesn't impact drainage off-site or anything, but it just didn't fit the ordinance, and so that's the reason for the request for the variance. Pretty simple, pretty clean. Planning Commission is recommending you the findings contained in the resolution, and if you are in agreement with those findings, your action is to approve the resolution that the request for variance V2 2019 from the parking lot curbing requirement for new industrial building development as proposed is hereby approved based on the findings.
Is there curbing on Hansel's property?
No, his does sheet flow.
Okay.
That in materials that gone over with Ken, that if you give me 1 second, that as that site was able to, he achieved site drainage where it sheet flowed from his building east across the parking lot.
Okay.
That proposed street, that goes through there, will that be his then, or is that ours? Or
What?
is behind there, is that gonna, the street from the, behind the fire department there, is it gonna go straight through?
The street
No,
at this point is not.
Proposed.
It is right there. If you look at it, it's at the very southwest corner of his property. The proposed street connection for, I believe it's, is it 6th?
I think it's 6.
6th Avenue Northwest. That's not proposed to go in at the present time, but that's where it's located along his western boundary of his property. But his access coming out of that property lines up with Dornbush right across the road. So the access outlet, we tried to make sure that Ken did, is that it's located in, so that it aligns with the one to the south.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike, or something that Sean could shed a light on?
No, I just had a question about if there would be, if there's going to be any paint or solvents, or just any concern of gas or dripping oil, since it is a car repair spot. But Howard answered those questions, and there is no painting there, so there's no any type of residue that we'd have to worry about getting into that wetland. So that cleared 5-0.
Okay.
I'll second the motion. Someone approve it?
No, not yet.
Oh, then I'll move it.
Okay, I got a motion by Sean Ryan,
I'll second.
second by Maggie Bass to approve the variance. If there's no other comments or questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Passes 4-0. Congratulations, Howard.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Good luck,
No,
guys.
you don't have to stay.
Yeah.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Next one, fence variance. I think we had this, didn't we have a variance on this property already?
Yes, back
Yeah.
in 2018. I don't see the applicant, this is for Greg and Jane Kemper, who are located at 1014 9th Street Court Southeast. And it's a variance request from the fence regulations to allow a 6-foot tall fence to be located up to the front side property line along 10th Avenue Southeast. You are correct, Mayor, that back in 2018, they were in for a variance where they were able to install a pool in the backyard for a pool setback from the wetland and to allow a 4-foot tall fence to be located 1 foot from the trail instead of the ordinance required 2. That's what you're recalling from 2018. Tonight, the variance request is proposing to install a 6-foot tall privacy fence to fully enclose their backyard after being granted the variance last year for the placement of the pool in their backyard. And it should be noted that the grade of their yard, if they had met the setback, would have made the 6-foot tall fence far less effective for screening purposes at the ordinance required 30-foot setback along 10th Avenue than if they were allowed to have this located within 1 foot of the trail where the existing 4-foot tall fence is located. Picture's worth 1,000 words here that the requirement, because it's a corner lot here and this is the front yard facing 10th Avenue, for them to install the 6-foot fences they're looking for, they would have to have set it back 30 feet west of 10th Avenue. They currently have, if you've driven by there, they've got a 4-foot fence right along the trail that kind of runs approximately right there. They're proposing to install the 6-foot fence from in the proximity of about where their gas meter is over to the trail, replace the 4-foot fence down to the corner, and then extend the 6-foot fence all the way over to their neighbor's fence to the west. I don't know if you know or recall from the variance last year that in having a swimming pool, 2 requirements, or either or alternative. Either if you install a pool, you have to have a fence around the perimeter of the pool area, or number 2, you have to remove the ladder at the end of the night of swimming and take it in daily if you don't have a complete fence. And so as you recall, you haven't seen a fence around the yard, so they've had to take the pool ladder in and out, and I guess that's kind of become a little bit more challenging than they would like. And so for that purpose, as well as privacy, they're wanting to install the fence as is shown in purple here, and the piece along 10th Avenue there, the 6-foot fence would replace the 4-foot fence that's there. This next photo kind of shows you a little bit of that picture, that they've got the 4-foot fence along the trail area there. And if they had had to move that fence into the 30-foot mark that I showed you on the previous page, going back here 1 slide to the green line, which is the 30-foot setback, you can see it would have taken up a significant part of the backyard, as well as leaving a significant part of the property on the outside of the fence. So they're asking to be able to replace this 4-foot fence with a 6-foot fence, and then they want to be able to construct it in place, connect it over to the west property line, and then connect it up to the house.
So is there a fence on the
Yeah,
west property line?
Yes.
The neighbor's fence? that they're
Yes.
gonna,
And what size is that? Is that at 4 foot?
Right here.
Yeah. And is that at 4 foot then? Because are we going to lose consistency is what I'm wondering.
For corner lots, they can construct a 6-foot fence can be erected at the 30-foot building setback line. It may also be erected behind the garage. There's not, the only requirement is that fences at the lot line can't be more than a height of 4 feet. So the 6-foot fence is not a change in the regulations that we allow. It's just up at the property line. But then the next slide in here is Ken wanted me to point out, as you can see, the hedge to the south, to the north, excuse me, although it's probably not trimmed up for the year, is a much greater barrier than a 6-foot high fence.
Now, there's no issue with the wetland behind it?
No, they would not be in the wetland.
Okay.
I've been by there and I always thought that fence that they have looks stupid, just kind of sitting out there doing nothing.
Well, I think that initially was a start of something that had a bigger plan. But as they've, I think if you drive by there today, they've also added, I think, a decking connection here on the north side of the pool as well, that I drove by this afternoon to take a look at that. And like I said, if they'd had to put that fence at 30 feet, it would pretty much come in so close that it would leave out a good share of the backyard.
So you had mentioned that if you have a pool, you have to have a fence around the perimeter of your yard, but it or the ladder.
Or they had to take
Right.
the ladder in and out every night.
But it doesn't look as if on the west side of their house that there is a fence that would prevent someone from getting in the backyard.
No, there's a neighbor's fence.
Well, yes, but someone could access the pool,
In between the houses.
but just like
Oh.
walking up here. So again,
It's intended, as I understand, it's intended to connect into wherever the neighbor's fence is on the west side.
right at the corner, but from their driveway, someone could get into the backyard. So I was just, if the fence has to be total perimeter, you would almost expect to have something here to prevent someone from getting in the backyard from a safety perspective.
I'd have to defer to Councilmember Ryan to see if he recalls from that discussion from the planning commission.
I don't, but I think this fence, this is possibly theirs, because it matches this white. Theirs, the fence back here is a red wood,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that's the neighbors or if that's
It's probably the neighbors, but that's 6 foot too, so I don't quite know.
Yeah, that's a good question. Hard to
it
tell.
looks like it's similar to that, but
It does, yeah.
and it looks like it ties into the wood fence right there. So I'm guessing there is a gate there or something, because it looks like it ties into the neighbor's fence.
All I can tell you from the notes and the information I was provided is that the fence would be installed to tie in with the adjacent fence to the west and tie back to the corner of the property along the trail, and it would not encroach on any wetland vegetation. But specifically, I think, Maggie, to your point, I don't know that I can specifically answer the question. I think what you're asking is anything on the very west side of the house.
Well, Mike, can we approve it with
Yeah.
the condition of it?
So we verify that?
Yeah, I was gonna make the
Yeah.
same suggestion, I mean, it's
Condition that
for the sake of
the
time.
entire backyard be improved.
Yeah, because there is, Councilman Ryan did point out in the air photo that there does appear to be a white fence here.
I don't
Same type
have-
of material,
yeah, I don't have that
Okay,
photo.
yeah.
The one
Yeah,
got
actually,
right
you
there.
can see the neighbor's fence, the brown with where the shadow is right there.
Yeah, and then there's a
that-
white stripe
Yeah.
there, so.
I'm guessing that just was not part of the plan, or I'm sure they're aware of why that's the whole thing, you got one side open. But the variance wasn't needed for that portion of the fence because it wasn't close enough to the
Right, so we're just voting
road.
on a variance right now.
We're just voting
not
on the
necessarily
variance,
the-
yeah. So That
Yeah,
would
'cause
still
the-
keep them out of ordinance, they would be against the city ordinance if they did not close that off.
Right.
Mhm.
Right, and
So-
so
so
you
the-
take the,
Correct, they'd still have to take the ladder in and out, and so the variance request that you have is not imposing the requirement allowing the fence to basically go back to 1 foot off the trail area versus the 30-foot setback. That's what the variance request is for tonight.
Yeah, but in order to approve it, we want to be in sync with the other, with the fence being on the west side of the.
It doesn't have to tie to the same height. It's not a requirement that it tie. This applicant can have a 4 or 6 foot height fence on whatever their preference is, irrespective of what the property to the west would want.
And Rick, it's not as big an issue as you think, because I actually have that same situation. My fence is 5 feet. My neighbor's fence is 6 feet, and you don't really even notice it.
Yeah, I'm cool with it. I just, in order to keep them in sync with, that west side would have to be closed off, and that was Maggie's one.
Well, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the variance with the 6-foot tall fence. You know, with the stipulation that they're aware that if there isn't a fence or something on the west side,
Yeah,
that
that we
it needs to
verify.
be in ordinance, under our ordinance.
Okay, I can do that.
I'll second.
We got a second by Sean Ryan. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay. Next one is now, Mike, did we, at some time, did the original garage have to be under a variance under this one?
No, I'll get into that. On the next one?
Yeah, this one with Ann Christy.
I'll get into that.
Okay.
Ms. Christie? I'm all for 2. That, I was just taking a wild stab that the applicant was here. The next one you have, Mayor, is a request for a variance proposed by Ms. Ann Christy for a reduction from the required 7-foot side yard setback from 7 feet to 5 feet, excuse me, to allow for the construction of an attached garage to an existing home and/or garage located at 305 Pershing Avenue North. Your question initially, as you were posing that, Mayor, just as a piece of background in here, is that this home was constructed in 1958, which predates any of the zoning ordinances that have been adopted by the city. So when you take a look at that 7-foot setback that you're thinking of as a requirement, they're already only 5 feet from the north property line versus what the ordinance requires at 7 feet today. So in the request, with their 22-foot by 16-foot attached garage addition, is that they're wanting to attach that onto the existing attached garage, and the variance would allow the attached garage addition to be located at 5 feet from the side property instead of the ordinance required 7, but that which would still be in alignment with what the existing garage is, and would be no closer than what that existing garage is. And as I stated earlier, that the house was constructed in 58, predating our zoning ordinance. The lot has, apparently the Ken, ideal depth and width for an interior lot. However, it was only constructed 5 feet versus the 7. And in wanting to add on is they want to add an existing single-stall garage directly to the east, which would be on the back side of the garage. Let me skip ahead here to get us in alignment. This is the front of the house here on Pershing. And if you take a look at this as kind of an overhead view, I was just at the front of the garage right here for you. And instead of this, here's the proposed addition of 22-foot by 16 feet onto the existing garage here. And so they'd like to be able to be 2 foot closer to the property line, but in the same alignment as presently exists on the existing garage. And when you take a look at that, in comparison to the neighborhood, Ken pointed out or noted that there are a number of other homes in the blocks in this area that have less than the 7-foot side lot line. And a number of them are in the same area that they all don't necessarily meet the 7-foot setback. But in this one in particular, is it would be consistent with what's there. They're not wanting to go any closer than the existing garage. They would have an outlet to the rear coming out. There's an alleyway out behind the house, and the property's here to the east of Pershing Avenue. And there would would be an open deck that would also be added on as well that is compliant with the zoning requirements.
So there's going to be a driveway on the,
Likely they will install some type of driveway, that there's a
Okay.
garage door there. Kent didn't indicate just exactly what they're going to do, but as with some of the others, it would have rear access to the alleyway.
okay. Any other questions?
The Planning Commission did recommend approval.
Yeah, didn't we have one just like this one too long ago? We thought that one.
Yeah. Well, I don't have an issue with it just because it lines up with the existing garage.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to be any different than what's there now. You can see, obviously, if you look at the green area up there, it's, a lot of it is outside the variance area, so.
Here's the front of it again. Those are some of just the side elevations. And I think that's all that he's given me to show you tonight.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the variance.
Okay. I got a motion by Sean Ryan, second by Rick Seiler to approve the variance as noted. So if there's no other comments or questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Passes 4-0. Okay, we're done with variances.
There, my planning duties are over for the night.
No, there's two joint powers.
He's not as planning hat. He's gonna
I think Kent's sitting around a campfire today somewhere in Wisconsin, enjoying the pleasant weather.
hopefully the gnats aren't bad there.
Oh, those are nasty tonight.
That should be just about done. Or, yeah, they're only supposed to be a week and a half to 2 weeks.
You let me know when that happens.
All right, I'll be on, right on.
Next one you have is a joint powers agreement with Scott County for assessment services covering the time period 2020 through 2022. Our current 3-year agreement is running out this year, and so we received a letter and a new proposed contract from Scott County for the assessment services covering that 3-year time period. I've broken out the approximate annual cost or change that we're seeing from Scott County, so you can see what's happening here on an annual basis. Total increase over the 3 years is about $3,400 or 8.6%, or an average annual increase of 2.9%. I did have conversations with the county assessor. As you know, they have replaced most of their assessing system, and they've chosen to keep that cost within Scott County and not pass that on to the cities and the townships in the assessment process. Had they included it now, we were looking at annual assessments that probably would have exceeded 15%. So it was nice to see that the county made that choice to, we're picking it up under our county taxes simply, but at least there wasn't an additional charge to our annual assessing fee. County comes in annually, they do 1/5 or 20% of the city every year that they come in and go through updates on 20% of the properties from a valuation standpoint. We've been real pleased that the choice is either the council has to act as the board of review for assessing, or we contract with the county for an open book service, and they've done a great job for us over at least the 11 years that I've been here now. The flip side is the Seward County does it. They do not charge for their services. And so the materials that I provided you is just showing you the historical 10 prior years and the proposed 3-year new contract.
Well, this is my third one, and, you know, it's more than doubled since I've been on the council in the 8 years. And, or almost doubled. And no, are we asking questions to this Michael Thompson? I think we had him in here a few years ago. Didn't he come in here to?
We just had him. We had him here in March.
Was it March, or was it March? Okay.
March of this year.
No, but I mean, on this issue, we had him back here. Didn't we, Chuck?
I don't recall
That was
that.
like 5 or 6 years ago. And I just want to make sure somebody's checking these guys. Because at 8%, now it's going to go up another 8, to, what you say, 8.6% in the next, over the 3 years. I mean, is this our commissioners, or are they the ones that ultimately are Scott County commissioners that oversee this department?
They do.
Okay, then I'll make my phone call to Barb.
But I think when you look at
Right.
what's in here, I think basically is staffing and operational changes, but there's nothing significant, as I said, that if they could put in that whole brand new computer system and the software program that they put in place to administer the assessing process, there we would have seen a significant change in the pricing that we're
Right,
looking at.
well, and I don't live in Scott County, so if you do my county taxes, that portion doesn't affect it, but, you know, if I were a Scott County resident, I'd want to ask these questions even more.
Well, on the flip side, even though the sewer is not charging us anything, they're picking up that total cost in the cost of the assessing services that they're doing.
No, I know that, but I have a direct line to our commissioner that I voice my concern as much as I can, so I'm just saying, I want people from Scott County to start questioning why this keeps going up, and it's more than doubled in the 8 years that I've been on this council, or almost, not quite. We've been under $1,000 from 12 to 18 to 19.
I can't answer that question.
No, I know, I'm making a point just for the residents to start asking questions.
Well, we work as a council here, so I kind of want to know too. I mean, if you want to, is this an issue that needs action immediately?
I don't think you're going to find, I did call him trying to clarify that, and that's where in his materials is that basically that it's basically internal departmental operating costs as far as staffing and payroll and health insurance and other costs that when you look at the volume of properties that they maintain, they also have in that process is that the annual appeals that occur and financing those appeals and defending them in district court is all part of the assessment process.
No, I totally understand it. You know, maybe he can justify it, but I just think it's ridiculous that it's almost doubled. Our fees to the city of New Prague have almost doubled in 8 years, 7 years. And I brought it up before. And I just want to make sure that it's not becoming a bloated government and there's, you know, because I would never, you know, if you came to me with a 8.6% increase in our city levy, I mean, I'd be asking a lot of questions.
Yeah, but it's the same thing happened on the sewer. It's just invisible because it's put into the existing assessment.
There's not a fee to the city, you're right, there's a fee to the residents, and like I said, I have a direct line, I see our county commissioner almost weekly, and I voice my concerns, and I check and ask questions, and I'm just saying, I just wish, I want Scott County people to realize this too, and really, anybody in the city of New Prague, because as I said, if it's in 7 years, it's almost doubled. It's gonna double again in 7 years, you know, I wanna make sure somebody's watching this, Thompson.
Well, that's really over a 10-year time period, Sean. If you look at what you're describing, if you're comparing 2012 to 2022,
Yep.
that's 10 years.
Or 10, you're right, 10 years. So, but that was the first time I voted on it, I think, was in 2012. I'm talking.
But also when you think about it, if they're assessing 20% of the homes in New Prague, the number of homes in New Prague is increasing. So that 20% becomes a larger number
Yeah,
of
when you
homes.
take a look at how our population and the number of houses and properties that we have, is that, as Maggie has alluded to, is that you'll hear at one of the next coming meetings that our city population with the growth in households and everything is that as of April of 2018 last year, we're now going to be over 8,000 population. So if you go back 10 years ago and you look at the number of households and the properties and how things have changed that way, that's part of this mix that he's got to cover.
No, I understand, but there's bigger growth in Shakopee and Savage and Prior Lake, and, you know, and I don't want to be subsidizing when they split this up and start subsidizing a bloated, because they have to hire 4 extra people because of all the growth in Shakopee.
I didn't get the other ones, but I think he did indicate in the letter that the growing communities may notice a slightly larger increase for those very reasons. That with their workload, the parcel creations, new home construction, annexation, those kinds of things, that there is probably a larger fees that are being incurred by some of those cities.
The smaller cities, on the behest of the bigger cities.
No, I'm saying that the larger cities are going to pay a much larger fee, that when you look at ours, we're looking at a 2-3, a 3, and a 3-1 over the next 3 years.
Right,
But to Maggie's point, I think to clarify, I mean, are you saying that, well, not only are they doubling it, but the size of us are getting bigger, so if they're getting a lot more money out of us?
No. My point is that the number of homes that are being built in New Prague are ever increasing. So when they say that they're going to assess 20% of the homes in New Prague, 20% of 5,000, maybe 10 years ago, versus 20% of however many homes. So the number of homes that they're assessing is increasing.
Their database is getting larger.
Yeah, that's very, and that could be it. I'd like to hear it from them though, and I'd like them to explain that. I think it's smart of residents and councils to be responsible with taxpayer money. And I just want to make sure that we don't have a big bloated government and they're all, that nobody's checking.
Would that be possible to have him come back in? Because I know he was just here. And
No, I can call him. We don't need to have him come in.
Well, I know,
what
but
he
we
says,
got to
but I just want some explanation. So-
Right, and if we move this, I mean, I'm then comfortable with voting yea on it when you're showing so much discomfort in it, and we're discussing it, but there's not a quorum that if me and you say no, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So if this action has to be held over so that they can come in and explain it, we'll just do that. But if it's a necessary action right now, we can do it with the condition that the assessor come in and explain it.
What would that do, Mike, does this have to be approved today?
No, it would not necessarily have to be.
So it doesn't go into effect until 2020.
We have to take action as far as tabling it?
No, that would be the appropriate action would be to table it if that's what you felt was necessary.
If we don't, I'm not saying that yet, that's a good point, Rick. But if we don't go with the joint powers, then that puts us where we'd have to.
You don't even want to go down that path.
No, but then we'd have to do it on our own? Is that what you're saying as a city, which would even be more expensive?
We'd have to create our own assessing department.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
not even an appropriate option.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Then I'll move it. I'm not happy with the nonstop increases here, and I'd like some explanation on it, but
I can follow up with a clarification and see if I can get further
No, I don't have it
information.
here.
Or
I'll call them.
Okay.
That's fine. And I'll let you know, Rick.
There's a motion at the bench, I'll second it.
Okay, are you making a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Motion by Sean Ryan, second by Rick Seller to approve the joint powers agreement, assessment agreement. There's no other comments. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0. Another joint powers agreement. More cleanup.
But you
Right
can-
in your red.
This is what we call the red line agreement, so that you can see all of the changes, deletions, additions, movement of language within the joint powers agreement with the school district. For the council's action back in December to choose not to continue the outdoor swimming pool, that kind of forces us to go back to the joint powers agreement and amend the agreement to delete out language associated with the operation of the outdoor swimming pool located over in Lexington. So with that, you can see the major changes are shown on pages 1, 5, 6, 8, and 9 that really result in the deletion or removal of language associated with the outdoor swimming pool is primarily what it does. And specifically back in sections 8 and 9, taking out the outdoor pool facility and most of the language dealing with the finances for the outdoor pool were removed out of what was then Article 10, now Article 9. The document that you have in front of you was reviewed at the Joint Powers meeting last week. Maggie and Sean were both there, as well as Ken from the city on May 28th. And the GP board is recommending to both the council and the school board that they adopt the revised agreement. In our case, where you have it in front of you tonight, in talking to school officials, it would go before the school board on June 24th for their review and approval.
One question, does that, if we pass that, does that mean that any removing of the pool, the cost of that will fall on us?
No, all we did was remove out the operation and finance of running the pool on a summer basis, as we've done in the past.
So we're gonna pick up the guy, whoever's gotta go out there and put the pump in it and clean it out, whatever.
Well, we always have been the responsible entity for the facility. The facility was always ours, and all of the operating costs to operate the pool have always been the city's cost. So yes, until the council and the budgetary process decides what you want to continue to do with that, we will be left with a requirement that periodically we're going to have to pump out the pool and get rid of the stagnant water and that, so that it's not an issue.
And have we ever discussed, removing it, or what is the plan with it? We're not just gonna leave an empty pool there forever.
Well, you were on the council, but in December, the council made the decision to not continue to operate the outdoor pool, but has not had the discussion as to what we're going to do with that, whether we're going to leave it, whether we're going to remove it, what the use is going to be. That discussion is yet to come.
I think that discussion will happen in the budget process. Obviously, if we're going to demolish it, put funds in. We also have to look at that property, the armory property also. But the issue we have with the armory property is we have asbestos mitigation that we have to deal with first.
Well, those are some major undertakings too.
Right.
Yeah, that's not even close to the ball field. I was just wondering because, it sure would be nice to have like an indoor batting cage, or something over by that, the baseball. And sooner or later, I was going to bring that idea to you guys, but I don't know.
There is a batting cage there between the golf course shed and
Oh,
should be on the west
there's two
side.
of them.
Yes, there's two
I
of them.
didn't even see
Not
them.
indoor.
There's two.
They're not indoors,
Yeah.
but they are two batting cages there located now.
If you go down to the golf shed, right adjacent to the golf shed, between there and the right field fence line, there are two batting cages that are set up for both public and baseball use.
And they have a pitching machine or no?
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got you guys off track on that. This has got to be moved, so yeah, I'll move.
Okay, I got a motion by Rick Seiler. I'll make a second on that. If there's any other comments? Not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. City of Belle Plaine.
Ken asked me to bring this one to the council, that this is kind of a good neighborly arrangement is what this is proposed at. If you recall, this past year we had an agreement with Belle Plaine to assist in the mentoring of their new building official, where we charged them an hourly rate and mileage for that mentorship services, where we had Chad Lunder, our building official, periodically went over to Belle Plaine to provide and assist with some training and ongoing guidance as they get started in their new with the new building official. They recently approached us again that this gentleman is due to volume fluctuation and limited staffing, lacking the commercial plan review experience. They're in the process of potentially receiving possibly up to a couple of commercial developments where they need some plan review assistance. And they don't have the expertise on staff to conduct that to the degree that they need to. And so they proposed to us, our city attorneys happen to work out of the same firm, proposed an agreement that would allow us to earn some additional revenue and help out an adjacent community, provided timing exists on our part. As we propose this and provide this to you, it's only conditioned on the abilities that we can find a way to fit it in, that we certainly would not drop what we're doing or delay what we're doing or anything of that nature. But we also know someday down the road we might need assistance somewhere from some other community, and so they've asked us if we would be willing to participate. The one thing that is able to make this a little bit easier is that because we've gone to the new plan review table that we have and we can share plans electronically, we're able to receive those preliminary plans digitally, and we can submit code review comments and reviews, make those notations right on the plan set and submit it electronically, where we don't have to go over and visit, spend time traveling back and forth to Belle Plaine. And so in that process is that if we were to undertake any plan review, we would receive 100% of the plan review as to what they charge for that plan review. And Ken gave you an example of what that amounts to, is that a permit valuation at about $1 million would generate a plan review fee of about $3,600. And so from our standpoint, it's only anticipated that if we have time and it works within our schedule, then we would assist it and provide that plan review. So we're not trying to go out of the realm of what we do. We are staying busy, but we also know that it's nice to periodically provide good neighborly services if we're capable of it.
Well, I think it's great that we're making money instead of spending it.
Yeah, I know, and it's pretty consistent that small towns like this farm out professionals that can handle stuff like that.
Well, it's not our intent to get into the long-term business of doing this, but if periodically it can work for both parties, we need to set up the mechanism so that it's structurally in place and that we know what we would do.
So we'll do the review, but they will actually do the signing off?
Yeah, they'll do all the inspection and all of those kinds
So
of things.
we're basically giving our opinion that everything meets code,
That's
up to
right.
their code?
It's the code review. They would do the site plan review, which is what Kent normally does, and then Chad does the building code review or the code review.
Okay, so we're just doing the code review?
Correct,
Okay.
just the building code review.
So we would actually be moving it, or Belle Plaine is still gonna be governing it, and we'll never see it here on our table.
No, no.
If you read the joint powers agreement, it pretty much outlines, or the document outlines the specific duties, and so it is just our review, and then Belle Plaine takes it from there and administers it through their own
Correct.
planning department.
And with no liability on our.
Nope, it's spelled out.
Yeah, I saw that. I just wanted
Make
to.
money, so there.
We're reviewing
Yeah,
the same building code that they're under is what we're under, so it's no different if it was occurring here or there, it's still the same code review. The site plan requirements could be slightly different or vary from one community to the next, but the building code review is under the same set of rules and requirements.
We'll get a bunch of them at 3,600 apiece.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Well, I don't know if they have that many $1 million projects over there. Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the agreement between Belle Plaine and Prague on this.
I'll second.
I got a second by Maggie
2
Bass.
seconds.
There's no other comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 4-0.
Should I just act like Bruce for a second? I go. That would be problematic.
You're gonna be in trouble. It's on camera, he can watch all this.
That's fine, he's going to.
Consent agenda, anyone have any questions or any items on the consent agenda?
I have a comment that I want to make about the golf board meeting minutes. They don't provide enough detail, and I would like to see more detail. So there was a marketing discussion, but there was no detail about what that discussion garnered. You know, a maintenance tournament, a member guest, and calendar events. So if I wanted to read the minutes of the golf board and really understand what was happening on the board, I think they need to be beefier. And we take a look at the park board minutes, and it really does go into a lot more detail. And I'm not saying it has to be pages and pages, but this tells me nothing.
Okay.
Well, the meeting minutes are only intended to really reflect actions that occur if they're doing something. What goes on as far as the depth and the breadth to do what you're asking for really comes back to the minute taker within that meeting arena. And there is no requirement that says forth what has to or what doesn't have to be put into minutes. But minutes are generally intended to reflect the actions taken by that governing board or body that you're taking minutes from.
But if you take a look at the meeting minutes from all of the other boards and.
But I said it's the minute taker
Yes, yeah.
that has a bearing on that. And you can see as I've worked with Barb and trying to train her, we're still trying to narrow down what we have in council minutes, more than what you're seeing at the present time, trying to winnow that down. Utilities is pretty straightforward. Planning commission or park board could be more, and that's directly related to the individual that does that. When you take a look at it, who does the minutes in the golf board, it's understandable why they're as limited as they generally are. There is no right or wrong, and I think that your request, I think back through the mayor as a member of that golf board, and just asking for more detail, or sometimes there's handouts that go with that, I think. But I think just to inquire to see if you can do a little bit more.
Yes, yeah, and that's all it is just a request then.
Yeah, like for example, the marketing discussion, we actually had a list of the tournaments that were happening in June, July, and August. And the ones that are noted here are new, the two first ones are new events. Maintenance tournament that we didn't have the year before, and that sort of thing. So he was just kind of bringing us up to date, bringing us the new tournaments that are going to be played this year that were not in Calgary last
Right,
year.
okay.
But,
Which isn't really articulated here, so.
Right.
Again, if I were to look at this, it doesn't say anything.
It's a real quick snapshot.
Yeah.
and I can mention that to Wade, and if there's, you know, like I said, if I would have included the list of events, you could have seen the events and say, oh, the marketing discussion had talked about all these events, and you're going to see the same tournaments. You know, we didn't lose any tournaments, and these are a couple ones that we're gaining.
Good. And you know, that kind of information is really good to capture because it is a city-funded amenity. So if we're seeing good things happening, you know, and that helps.
Well, so May is not going to be.
Well, yeah, I know the
Trust
weather
me.
was.
We've just had April meeting, and that looked good. It's May that we're all cringy.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. That's,
Okay.
I just wanted to.
But I'll put a note on that and see.
Thank you.
Mike, there's a Kennedy engraving. I know it's $117 for a wine art. Is that just cleaning something up with a flat or something? On the legal? On the first page, it's only $117, but it
That would have been, those are billable. Those are billable to both, as you see those two on others to be reimbursed. That would have been review of matters related to the wine and development.
his development's just one plat, right?
The plat, whether it's gone all the way through the process or not,
Okay.
those are residuals. These are from his March billing that we're just now paying.
Okay.
That's why they're under others to be reimbursed.
And then the Scott County Attorney's Office, the court fines, do we get any money from that?
It's a pass-through that we receive that, we remit that to Scott County.
Okay.
And there is zero billing under the.
So it's a zero effect to our
Correct.
income statement, okay.
Yep.
Those are the only questions I had. Anyone else have any questions on the consent agenda? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I got a second by Rick Seiler.
I waited.
I always go to who I hear first.
That's okay.
So I got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes 4-0. Now we're at miscellaneous. Anyone in the audience want to, any comments? No, okay. Mitch? You're good? Patrick?
I hope everybody's enjoying the weather.
Okay, well, thank you. Jim, anything else?
I have nothing more for this evening.
Okay, Michael?
I've got a couple, actually several. In your packet is information with the outcome of the, let me get the microphone here. With the recent legislative action as part of the tax bill, the legislature did approve an increase in LG for 2020. So in your packet is information that I gleaned from the League of Minnesota Cities, that we should see about a $53,000 annual increase in our LGA beginning in 2020. So, good news for 1 year. Looks like just a nominal increase in 21. So not a lot of real forecast of any major increases beyond this one right now. Between the 2 years, it will return the LGA to the level that it was back in 2002 that was provided to cities throughout the state of Minnesota. So that's been the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities has been a real strong advocate. 70, 75 or 80 cities that are in the coalition have been working on that for quite some time. So it was nice to see that change. I heard from 2 of you that you had challenging emails on the certificate. That's noted, it's being looked into. We'll let you know as soon as it's fixed, but we're working on that one. In front of you should be construction 3 update that obviously the weather last week was not good to the contractor and us from a timeline standpoint, so they're out working, trying to get all the curbing, storm sewer intake, all that stuff forward. The water line installed, but they're playing catch up from bad weather last week. Utility transformer was installed today. The old one was picked up. I think Councilmember Seiler was there to see part of that. I got to see the old one removed and then got to see the new one installed. Bruce indicates that the contractor or the supplier will be in town tomorrow. We're working over the next several days, and he hopes to have this up and operational by the end of the week, and then to slowly bring it into action. But that occurred. Temporary easements we're working hard on right now, trying to acquire the 121 temporary easements that we have to as part of our highway project that falls on city staff, SEH, trying to get that done. And so making contact, follow up, and that is taking some time, but we're incrementally making progress. At some point here, if we're unsuccessful in the very near term, those that we don't acquire, we have to put on a list to tentatively take a look at probably acquiring through eminent domain procedures, so we hope we don't have to go that route, but we may have to indicate that in order to help move the process along, so that we have them under a schedule to ensure that we have the temporary easements available to us. But we are making phone calls and follow-up with businesses and property owners. In many cases, we find that people are just setting them aside and won't get to it or forgot about it. And so it's been taking a little bit of work in that process. As we take a look at the financing for our CIP capital improvement items this year through the capital equipment certificates, that and the bonding for our 2019 street project, we're likely to look at the next meeting, June 17th, having Terry Heaton out and calling for the sale on the bond issue with a potential sale date of July 15th, just so you kind of know what's coming that way. And then this past week, we did get to meet with the consultant, True North, on taking a look at our technology report. And so it's our desire to want to bring that to the council. And the question that I posed to the mayor today was to bring it for discussion tonight, whether we want to take time in a council meeting or whether timing-wise you'd rather just set up a special meeting and deal with that in kind of a workshop setting.
Is that a question to us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think so.
Oh, I think so. What?
What workshop?
You want to do a workshop?
Yeah, because I'd like more info on it.
Okay, so we dedicate it.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you looking for something in June?
I will go back with the council's interest in doing this. I'll go back and find out
Find out some available dates for him.
dates, and then I'll shoot dates out to you.
Okay.
And we'll try to pick, going from there as to a workshop date that I'll try to get at least 3 options so that we've got something that we can pick from, then hopefully we can find that which is workable for most of the council.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Thank
That
you.
should be all I have.
Okay. Maggie?
Oh, Barb.
Oh, Barb, I'm sorry.
No, I don't.
Okay, now Maggie?
No, I don't have anything.
Sean?
I just had a quick question. I had someone ask me, there's a stop sign on First in Lexington, and there's a tree like right in front of the stop sign. It's very hard to see. I don't know what our city ordinance is or But it's, and I actually drove by and it would be real easy to blow right through that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you never have
I've
that.
had problems with that.
I will pass it on.
that was all I had.
Actually, if I could back up, I did have one thing. I had a citizen of New Prague approach me yesterday, and the construction that's being done on County Road 37, I think he said he lives at 203 Meadowview. And there's pieces of plywood on his lawn and other stuff that's being stored. And I've seen this on other people's lawns as well. So I just don't know if it's just that little bit of an easement that the city has into.
Well, there technically is right away behind the curb, and so.
Right, but how much?
And that could vary depending upon what street that we're
Okay.
talking about, where that might be, but you're.
I've seen a lot of that too, and you know, what they're doing is covering the ground for, if they're going in there.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be all muddy and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah,
So there is a purpose behind it.
Well, if there's a hole, obviously, I understand that, but.
Or yet to be a hole.
Yeah, but this gentleman just said, no, he's pretty particular about his yard, and
I did see
There
that.
will be, just as an aside, there will be restoration that will follow any of that.
Good,
Where they
okay.
are off the property, they will go back and do restoration behind them. But in that case,
Yeah.
without being able, I've noted the address, and we can take a look at it to see specifically. But in many cases, that right of way goes beyond just the curb line. Typically, in most cases, if there's a sidewalk there, then it's probably back to the back edge of the sidewalk is where that would generally be. But in those cases where there is no sidewalk or trail, you can't tell exactly where the property line is and where that right-of-way line is. In this case, we can take a look at it and find out. It wouldn't surprise me that just because of the nature of the construction workers is that it's not uncommon to find out that sometimes they take more space than they should have when they're doing that, and they don't always,
We do not.
not all of them, but some do, and so I'm not gonna say that they're not perfect in the process, but sometimes probably abuse that more than they should. But in this case, we'll investigate this one and see what we can do to clarify the answer.
thank you.
Just to put a background on that too, you know, they buttoned it up so that, for the weekend, I think it was, and so they coned everything off, marked everything. There was a couple spots that were kind of sloppy to relate with that, where, you know, there was a pile of dirt in the road and there wasn't cones in front of it and stuff like that. So you might want to just ask them to just be a little neater and cleaner on here and mark it up for safety reasons.
We had that conversation.
Okay.
Greg?
Actually, I got quite a few good stuff, so I'll go real fast. I'd like to recognize, we have several kids here in New Prague that made academic all-star. And one of them is Hannah, and I don't want to put her last name out here for the parents' request. And she's in kindergarten. And she made academic all-star, so I want to say hi to Hannah. Congratulations, great job. She's going to watch the city council meeting, and as a kindergartner, I'm just so impressed with that little girl. She's just the greatest kid, and so she's an academic all-star, so I want to congratulate her on getting that. There's only a handful of students and then a handful of teachers, and they all got the academic all-star. And I know it's a school board thing, but since I talked to her this weekend, and she was such a cute little kid, you know, congratulations. And she'll be watching this. Second thing I had was, and he pretty much did all of it, but for Bruce and Bruce on the Utilities Commission, they discussed the financing, or you know, the options of how they're going to pay for the new sub, and I think they got it worked out where there will be no bonding or anything out of it. So kudos to the Utilities Department. I mean, they did a great job today with the placing of the sub, and I'm really impressed with them. I've been watching both Utilities and Public Works on their work ethic and what they've been doing, and they're all getting an A+ for me. Like I say, except for the fact that Things could have been buttoned up a little bit better on 37, but you're on it. So they're getting an A+, and I'd like to give it to law enforcement A+ too. They've been real visible all weekend, and I've had a chance to say hi and talk to a couple of them, and I just think they're a great bunch of guys, and Jim should take a little pride. I mean, you got yourself a good team, so let's see. I think that's it. I think I said it real fast.
All right. The other thing, Mike, I noticed that on the Shopwell building, it talked that it's available now. Do you know if that's all been worked out through the bankruptcy? Or?
I've not heard any recent details, so I can't tell you exactly whether it's totally out of the bankruptcy and in the hands of the, no, there's not a liquidator. It's privately owned by an entity out of North Dakota.
So you don't know if it's gonna go up for sale or tear it up?
They won't tear it up.
Won't go up for sale. It was under a lease between the owners in North Dakota and the Shopco. I just don't know if it's totally cleared the bankruptcy process where it's back in their hands and they have complete control of that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just noticed it.
No, that was a question. So there's some more.
Yeah, because a lot of times those things can linger on and that kind of scares businesses away, but it sounds like, based on the sign, that you can inquire about leasing that property. So, that's all I had, so if there's nothing else.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second that motion by Rick Sauer to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposition? Okay, we're out of here. Thank you everyone for coming.